Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel, and welcome to the Computer Chess Championship Season 13 semifinals. So, parallelly to this TCEC Season 17, also the CCC is played now, and in the semifinals we had really the top engines: Ellenstein, Leela C Zero, Stockfish, and Komodo. But Leela C Zero and Stockfish managed to get it to the finals. We'll have again the super finals in this season 13, but we'll also have the super final in this TCEC season 17. So of course Stockfish and Leela C Zero are really the top engines, but I still think that Leela C Zero is slightly better. Leela C Zero finished also this TCEC season 17 on the first place of this Premier Division, and also in the semifinals, Leela C Zero had the best score. And today I wanted to show really a great game from this CCC season 13 semifinals between Leela C Zero and Stockfish. They faced each other many times now, but I still think that Leela C Zero is a little bit better, has a better positional understanding, and it seems to me that Leela C Zero has also improved the tactical skills. I think Leela C Zero in the past had some tactical issues. Now, when that problem is solved, I think Leela C Zero will win also this season 13 and also this TCEC season 17. So I wanted to show you now a great game, as I said, from the semifinals. We have here Leela C Zero with the white pieces, and Leela C Zero opened with the move d4. So Stockfish answered with the move knight to f6. We have c4 and now c5. The Benoni defense after the move d5. We have e5. The check Benoni, which is a good line. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I've played many games against Dean Liren, and the only game that I won was in this check Benoni as black. The idea behind this opening, behind this setup, is to create really this firm pawn structure in the center, which leaves you the flexibility to create a6, b5 pawn breakthroughs on the queen side, but it also gives you the opportunity to play some g6, bishop to g7, and then f5 ideas. So you have a certain flexibility in the game. You can attack on both sides. But there are also problems after the move here e4, like Leela C Zero played. White has also accomplished a very nice and firm pawn structure in the center, and the more important thing is that we have already occupied our opponent's other side of the board, so it means we have already occupied the fifth rank, and still White has also flexibility in the game, so White can also try a3, b4 pawn breakthroughs, but also can create sometimes this g4, h4, h5 ideas in order to crack the position on the king side. So White has the flexibility and Black has the flexibility, but there is one advantage that White has that Black doesn't have. The problem is that we can, in this position, sometimes stay with the king in the center. So this pawn structure in the center, the c4, d5, e4 setup, leaves us also the opportunity to stay with the king in center, as we are protected by our own pawns. On the other hand, Black's king, if the Black's king stays in the center, it could be really dangerous. And we see also, I've prepared also some tactical lines in which I can show you how bad it can be when Black stays with the king in the center. After the move e4, here g6 was played, going into now in sort of a king's Indian setup with the preparation to play bishop to g7 and now f5. And in the game f3 was played, which creates sort of a same-ish attack setup. Here by Leela C Zero, with the flexibility, I'm pointing again out, maybe even to push the pawn on g4. So in the game, knight from b to d7, and this is now a very important move, as it leaves now Leela C Zero the opportunity to play with the move with the knight on h3, as this bishop is not covering the h3 square anymore because it's blocked out by its own knight. After the move bishop to e3, here a6 was played, and now knight to a3, as I said, with the preparation to play the move knight to f2, which creates again a good defender in front of White's king, because as I said, Black would love to go with this idea here also to push the pawn on f5. In the game rook to b8 played by Stockfish, it seems like a good move because we are preparing here some b5 pawn breakthroughs, but b5 isn't a possibility as White hasn't played here the move knight to e2. Still, White has played this move knight to h3 with knight to f2 ideas, so this knight is not standing in our own way. So now we have still this b5 square protected, so b5 pawn breakthroughs are not possible so far by black. And in the game, queen to d2 played by Leela C Zero. We have now knight to b6. Very important move for black, but it's also not a common idea in these setups, as you want this move, you want to prepare this b5 pawn breakthrough. But the main positional idea, of course, for black here is to take out this knight, then create some weak pawn structures in front of the king. And black's idea, if the pawn structure would be doubled here, if white would have double pawns, is to play maybe something like knight to h5, then followed with knight to f4, as this knight is not covering this weak square in white's position anymore. So in the game, knight to f2, getting out of this positional threat, knight to h5 was played, and now we have a4. Bishop to g7. It seems also now that black could proceed here with some f5 pawn breakthroughs immediately. It seems like a dangerous move, but this is the main problem here in black's position. This move a5 after knight to d7. Still we have the possibility to take e takes f5. G takes f5 would be the possibility, and now g4 would be really dangerous here for black. After something like f takes g4, we could have the possibility knight takes g4, and you see how weak now this king in the center is. Still, white's king is perfectly fine, as it is covered still here with this very powerful pawn structure in the center, and also this pawn, this black's pawn, stands in the way. Here black cannot create some important checks maybe through the e file. So in the game, as said, bishop to g7, and I'm going to show you what will happen if black plays this early f5, if black plays this f5 move in an early stage of the game. As I said, this is one of the main goals in this King's Indian setups. Let's flip the board. If you're familiar with the King's Indian, one of the main ideas is to push here the pawn on f5, f4, then g5, then g4 if the position allows it, maybe again play with their knight on f6, creating really this pawn storm on the king side. But it will be not possible because Leela C Zero will play a really perfect positional game. In the game, bishop to d3 was played, and let's see now, this wasn't played in the game, but let's see now a potential f5 move in an early stage of the game. Then first of all, you get this move bishop to g5. You have to do something. If you, for instance, play bishop to f6, we have bishop takes f6, queen takes f6 would be again the normal idea. And now this move a5. This is this main tricky idea by of the setup of white. After something like knight to d7, we have the possibility to take e takes f5, g takes f5, and now again this very annoying move g4, which cracks the position immediately. After something like, I don't know, f takes g4, we have knight takes g4. We're leaving also our pawn hanging, but that's not the problem in this position. The problem is this endangered king in the center. Then we would play something simply like rook to g1, and after potential maybe queen to f4, which seems like a natural move, of course, simplifying the position, trying to get the queens off the board. Then knight to e4, I think, is a great positional move. Okay, black can trade off the queens, king takes d2, you have to cover with your king. That's the main problem, your pawn on d6, and I think now bishop to e2 would be a good positional move here by white. After something like, I don't know, knight to f4, which seems also like a logical idea, then you get a knight to h6, and I'm not seeing a good way how to protect this anymore. Rook to g7 is a serious threat, and then if you lose this d6 pawn, then I think this pawns would be too much to handle. This would be this would be too many weaknesses in black's position. So you see how dangerous it is in this position to push this pawn on f5 immediately. So it's not possible. So that's why here in the game, knight to f4 was played by Stockfish, and here Leela C Zero simply castled. Okay, now knight takes d3 was played, queen takes d3. Again, black's idea is to push this pawn on f5, like in the King's Indian. I'm repeating myself, sorry, but here the main goal is this move f5. But again, it's still not possible, as black has still this weak knight. Again, this a5 move is very tricky. In the game, castling was played. But let's check out again this potential f5 move. If f5, for instance, black is playing now, then we have again here this move a5. If, for instance, black retreats with the knight on a8, which seems like a good move because we want, of course, to have our f5 square covered. We don't want to play knight to d7 in order to block out our bishop. Then again, I think we have the possibility to play e takes f5. Bishop takes f5 doesn't bring you so much because we can simply play on our blocking system with the move knight to e4. And this position is really blocked out. This bishop is not so powerful anymore, and you don't have any more the pawn connection, so you cannot play this normal idea to push the pawn on f4 here. This bishop is really bad as it is blocked out by its own pawn. The knight is in the corner, and here, for instance, let's see black castles. Then there is this problem. We could immediately try, I think, even the move b4. After c takes b4, we could play maybe knight to a4 and try also some queen traps. Here the positional problem is also again this d6 pawn. Here after queen to a5 we could try maybe here knight to b6 and also trapping the queen, so taking the pawn is not a possibility. Here I think again black has too many weaknesses in the position, so I think it again would be a lost game. So as said, after this move queen to d3, f5 wasn't played by Stockfish in the game. So you see, it's not possible to go with our plan, to go with this common King's Indian attack. In the game, castling was played, and now a5 anyway by Leela C Zero, and now knight to d7. You see, again, this knight is blocking out the light square bishop. Again, f5 possibilities are not so powerful. In the game, knight to a4 was played, and here queen takes a5. Again, let's check out this f5 move. Again, I think it doesn't bring you so much because we have simply the possibility to retreat with the bishop to d2, and after something like f4, now b4 is even more dangerous. After something like, I don't know, maybe g5, let's see a potential g5 move. If black expands here on the king side going for a normal King's Indian attack, then simply b takes c5, knight takes c5 would be probably the continuation, but now knight takes c5, and after d takes c5, black has a huge positional problem here. It's this supported pass pawn. I just want you to imagine now a position in which we don't have any rooks, queens on the board. If these pieces are all off the board, then white would simply have a winning endgame because we have this main strategical element. It's the supported passed pawn. So this would be, I think, a losing endgame here for black. That's why creating such a weakness is not good here. So that's why in the game after the move knight to a4, Stockfish tried some tactics here. The game was continuing with queen takes a5, but it leaves now a very nice tactical shot. Knight takes c5. In the game, knight takes c5 was played. Rook takes a5, the queen. Knight takes d3, and now queen takes d3. And again, I want you now to evaluate the position. When we see these bishops are bad. This bishop doesn't have a good activity. This bishop is blocked out. Still, the pawn structure in the center is blocked out, which is favorable for the knights, of course. This knight is very powerful, as we can again play some b4 ideas. b4 and c5 would be the main positional problem for black to solve, because we're cracking again this position around this d6 square. And in the game, bishop to d7, trying to desperately activate the bishop somehow, but now simply here b4 was played by Leela C Zero, pardon me. That wasn't the continuation here. Rook to c1 was first placed, and now rook to c8, and now rook to a1. After f5, we have king to f2, we have bishop to f8, king to e1. Very important move as we get our king more towards the center, because we are already in the endgame stage. Here in the game, rook to a8 was played, and now finally this b4 move. I'm sorry about that. I lost here this move order. Now again, this positional idea b4 and c5 is the main threat, and here Stockfish tried to defend with the move bishop to e8, king to d2. You see how white's pieces are playing in perfect harmony. In the game, rook to c7 was played, which was maybe idea to create a sort of a blocking system here, not allowing this c5 pawn breakthrough. But now b5 was played by Leela C Zero, cracking the position on the queen side. You cannot take because your rook is hanging, so that's why rook to c8 was played. But now simply b6, we have rook takes c4, rook takes c4, rook takes c4, and here comes A really cool move. Rook takes a6. Now this rook comes very actively into the game. You cannot take b takes a6 as you get b7, and you cannot go with this rook behind the pawn as this knight is covering this very important square. So this would be game over. So in the game after rook takes a6, f4 was played, bishop to g1, and now rook to c8. Stockfish realized the problem. This is the main weakness now, a new weakness in the position. Rook to a7, rook to b8, and now knight to c1. The idea behind this move is to go with our knight on a5, then attack here again this b7 weakness. So that's why here Stockfish had to play defensively here after knight to b3, bishop to c8, knight to a5, and you see how bad all of these black pieces are. This bishop is out of game. This bishop and the rook are simply stuck to the defense of this b7 pawn. In the game, bishop to e7 was played, and now comes really a cool move, knight to c6, creating the fork on the bishop and the rook. So you have to take the knight. After b takes c6, we have d takes c6, and the problem is now these are two connected pass pawns. You cannot compete with them. Even the possibility is to sacrifice maybe the bishop here with some bishop to b7 ideas, but simply we can take rook takes b7, and if you even take here c takes b7, you cannot catch up this pawn. Even c7 is a possibility here for white, so this is again completely losing endgame for black. So basically this is game over after white managed to get this two pawns connected. After the move bishop to d8, which was the continuation by Stockfish, here very cool move, c7, the fork on the bishop and the rook. Bishop takes c7, we have rook takes c7, and now bishop to a6, very important move. Now rook to d7, creating again, I'm pointing you out, this was the main weakness in black's position, this pawn on d6. After king to f8, we have rook takes d6, king to e7, and now rook bishop to c5 with some discovered attack possibilities, maybe to get this pawn with some discovered checks. That's why here rook to d8 was played, and now rook to d5. Very important idea here by Leela C Zero to create a new pass pawn in the position, as these pawns are still on dark squares, so there would be still a target. In the game, king to e8 was played, and now bishop to d6. Now this pawn is very dangerous, so this bishop is again simply too stuck in order to defend here this pawn from promotion, so this bishop is out of game. In the game, king to f7 was played, we have bishop takes e5, now king to e8, and now again Leela C Zero takes a new pawn, we have rook takes d5, e takes d5, and now bishop to b7, but it's a little bit too late because the king can now come very actively into the game. Bishop takes d4 was played, king to bishop takes d5, king to d4, we have bishop to b7, and now king to e5, king to d7, and now this king comes into the game and will take these two pawns, which are again weak, and in the game bishop to the d5 was played, but now simply king to g7, h5, another problem here. Leela C Zero simply took, we have h4, king to g5, we have bishop to e7, and now Leela C Zero took another pawn, king to f6, and here Leela C Zero again was mocking a little bit. I've seen now many games by Leela C Zero in which Leela C Zero was a little bit mocking its opponent. Here Leela C Zero played a very funny move, played the move bishop to e5. So tricky move. You cannot take, of course, the bishop. It's a lost endgame anyway, because then you get simply king to g5. This is a pass pawn. As I said, this bishop is simply stuck to the defense of this promotion. When this pawn gets on b7, then it would be game over. So this bishop is out of game. But still, it was really a cool idea to play here this move bishop to e5, because Leela C Zero is a little bit programmed like it's supposed to mock a little bit, and I really like this move. In the game, king to g6 was played, and I'm not going to show you now the whole game, as it was really a mocking game from this point on, But I hope you realize this is completely winning for white with the 4 extra pawns, and Leela C Zero, of course, won the game. The whole game, you can see in the description below, the game was prolonged only because Leela C Zero was mocking Stockfish for further, let me see, 30 moves, so it was an incredible game. And as I said, I still think that Leela C Zero is now the best engine in the world, as it plays really some dangerous chess, some great positional chess, some great attacking combination style chess, and we'll have now 2 finals. As I said, we'll have this Stockfish Leela C Zero final in the TCEC season 17, and we'll have also in this CCC season 13. So it will be some. I think we'll have some great games, but I still think that Leela C Zero will win both of them. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this game. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games from the series. Here's the link, and you can also watch my best chess games of all time if you want to see humans battling in their own best chess games that were played in chess history. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thank you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.